"Ladies and gentlemen," the master of ceremonies' voice echoed, a golden trumpet blast of betrayal. "The Innovation of the Year award goes to Alexander Hayes, Chief Technology Officer of Novatech, for the groundbreaking kinetic synchronization array." The applause hit me like a physical assault. My breath hitched, a gasp that no one heard. The fork in my hand, now a useless piece of metal, clattered against the plate. That vile man, Alexander Hayes, was standing, a look of smug satisfaction plastered across his face. It wasn't the smile of a winner. It was the venomous grin of a pathetic thief who had just gotten away with his crime. My blood ran cold, then boiled. He was accepting an award for an achievement I, Clara Evans, had dedicated 5 years of my life to building. He had stolen my work, brazenly and without a shred of remorse. He was the director, but not the creator. The Kinetic Synchronization Array, KSA, was my brainchild, the product of countless sleepless nights, the lines of code I'd written, the models I had built. I had brought him a perfect report. Performance boosted by 7% over the industry standard. Completed on a budget of exactly $2 million. Yet, all he had done was sign the paperwork, and now he was standing there, claiming all the glory. He had reduced my work to a mere task, a tool for him to climb the corporate ladder. And now, he had done it, on the back of my sweat and tears. I clenched my hands into fists, my nails digging into my palms. The blood in my veins felt like acid. I watched him walk to the podium and take the crystal trophy, a prize that should have been in my hands. The way he held it, so casually and confidently, made my skin crawl. He began to speak, droning on about vision and collective effort, the same flowery lies I had heard 100 times. All eyes were on him, no one even remotely aware of the truth. In that moment, amidst the pomp and circumstance, I realized this wasn't just a personal slight, it was an open theft. My hatred for Alexander Hayes was no longer something I could contain. It wasn't just disappointment, it was a promise. I would not let him get away with this. I would expose the true face of this hypocrite, no matter the cost. The morning after the awards gala, the cold London air tasted like ash. My fury from the night before hadn't dissipated. It had solidified into a hard, brittle core of rage. I couldn't stomach the thought of showing my face at Novatech, but staying home felt like letting him win. As I walked down the sterile hallway to my office, I heard a voice behind me. "Clara, wait up!" It was Sarah, a bright-eyed young engineer from my team. She was clutching a branded Novatech coffee mug, a huge grin on her face. "Can you believe it? Alexander won. It's all over the news. What a night!" A hollow ache bloomed in my chest. I forced a weak smile. It was certainly a night. Sarah didn't notice my strained tone. She just kept gushing. "He's such an amazing leader, isn't he? He came in this morning and said he couldn't have done it without the team. So humble. I heard a few of the guys are asking him for raises. Do you think he'll say yes?" The innocent optimism in her voice was a knife twist. I looked away, my eyes fixed on the closed door of Alexander's office. "I think," I said, my voice barely a whisper. "That's exactly what I'm about to find out." I left a confused Sarah behind and strode directly to his office. The brass nameplate, Alexander Hayes, Chief Technology Officer, gleamed mockingly. My knock on the door was sharp, a declaration of war. "Come in," his voice called out, smooth as polished granite. He was sitting behind his mahogany desk, a king on his throne, sipping coffee from a mug that was probably 100 times more expensive than Sarah's. He didn't look up immediately, but when he did, his smile was as practiced and hollow as his speech last night. "Clara, To what do I owe the pleasure? I trust you're not still hung up on that award show. I'm here for what's mine, Alexander, I said, ignoring his condescending tone. I walked to his desk and leaned my hands on the edge. The Innovation of the Year award belongs to me and my team. The kinetic synchronization array was my design, my code, my life for the past 5 years. And it was delivered on a budget of $2 million with a 7% performance boost. It's time for me to be recognized, and it's time for me to be compensated for my work. His smile widened, a truly sickening sight. Recognized? My dear Clara, you have a job here. What more recognition do you need? As for compensation, let me be frank. I've already signed off on your salary for the next fiscal year. It's generous. I shook my head, my jaw tight with fury. That's not good enough. I'm asking for a 5% raise. It's standard for a team leader who just delivered a flagship product. He finally put his mug down, the playful mask dropping away to reveal the cold, hard man underneath. Clara, I think there's a fundamental misunderstanding here. You are an engineer, a fantastic one, I'll grant you. You are an executor of my vision. You are a great tool, but you are not a leader and you are certainly not a visionary. That is my role. Your job is to build what you are told to build, and you will be paid what I deem fair for that. Do you understand? I stood there, paralyzed by the sheer, unadulterated contempt in his voice. He had reduced my entire existence to being a tool. The man who had taken my work and my glory was now refusing to pay me fairly for the privilege of letting him get away with it. Humiliation washed over me, a hot, shameful wave. I felt my face flush. You understand, don't you? He pressed, enjoying my silence. Now, if you'll excuse me, I have a meeting with the board. They're very interested in the future of our award-winning engine. I turned and walked out, not a single word of rebuttal leaving my lips. The heavy door closed behind me with a final, echoing thud, sealing my fate. I had been a fool to think I could reason with him. He hadn't just stolen my work, he had stolen my dignity and then spat on it. But as I walked back to my desk, a new, far colder feeling took hold. He had called me a tool. Fine. He would learn that a tool can be used for demolition just as easily as it can for creation, and I had a demolition job in mind. I slammed the door to Alexander's office shut, the sound echoing my rage. The humiliation was a raw, burning fire in my throat, but it had ignited something else too. A cold, hard resolve. I wasn't just angry anymore. I was on a mission. As I walked back to my desk, my mind was already racing, sifting through years of memories, looking for a way, any way, to fight back. Just as I sat down, a junior developer named Leo, a kid barely out of college, bounced over to my desk. Hey, Clara, can I ask you something about the KSA architecture? He asked, a notebook in his hand. I was just talking to Liam, and he said you're the one who really designed the core interface. He said you're like a legend around here. I forced a tight smile, the praise tasting like ashes. It was a cruel reminder of the recognition I should have received. Thanks, Leo. What's up? I just can't figure out how the adaptive load module connects to the core array, he admitted, pointing at a line of code on his screen. I asked Alexander about it a few weeks ago, but he just told me it was proprietary logic and to leave it alone. My blood ran cold. He said that? Yeah, Leo said, shrugging. Said it was too complex for a new hire to understand. He's the genius, right? The one who won the award last night. The words were a hammer blow. Alexander hadn't just stolen my work. He was actively hiding its true origins, making himself the gatekeeper of my own knowledge. He was ensuring that even within my own team, my contributions would be buried. Listen, Leo. I said, my voice low and urgent. What he told you is garbage. The core logic is based on a foundational patent I filed years ago. It's a completely different approach. Just give me a minute, okay? I have to find something. I watched Leo walk away, my heart pounding. It was a risky move, telling him even that much. But it was a necessary one. I needed to act fast. With shaking hands, I opened my personal cloud drive, searching for a time capsule from a more naive era. I sifted through files from 2022, back when I was just a solo engineer with a crazy idea and a tiny office in a back alley of London. The company I worked for then was a small startup that Novatech had since acquired. I hadn't been a CTO or a team leader, I had been a builder. Then I found it, a folder labeled AIL Patent Filing, 2023. My breath caught in my throat. I clicked it open, and there it was, a PDF of my provisional patent application with the European Patent Office. It was a rough draft of the KSA, the same foundational technology, the same core principles, but filed under a different name. My name, Clara Evans. And as I scrolled down, I found a forgotten email thread. It was an exchange between me and my young, cheap lawyer, a kid named Tom. Me. Tom, everything looks good with the provisional patent for the adaptive load engine. But I'm taking this new job at Novatech soon, and they have an IP clause. Should I be worried? Tom. Clara, as long as Novatech doesn't file for a full patent on this specific tech, and as long as they don't have you sign an explicit IP transfer for it after the acquisition, this provisional patent remains yours. The original filing is in your name, on your time. You're in the clear. Just make sure to keep a copy of everything. My eyes filled with tears, not of sadness, but of pure, unadulterated vindication. Alexander had been so focused on stealing the final product that he had forgotten to secure the blueprint. He had bought a house and hadn't realized the land it was built on was still legally mine. The company's lawyers, in their haste, must have missed the provisional filing, seeing only the more complete projects that were ready for market. A cold, hard laugh escaped my lips. My rage, which had been a suffocating weight, now felt like a focused beam of power. This wasn't just my claim, it was my leverage. This was the founder's proof. The smoking gun. With this document, I could prove that Alexander's vision was nothing more than a theft, a pale imitation of a technology that was, and always had been, mine. He thought he was a visionary. He was about to learn he was nothing but a thief, and I was about to expose him to the world. The war had just begun, and now I had my weapon. After discovering my forgotten patent, the quiet fury that had been smoldering inside me ignited into a cold, determined flame. I was no longer just an angry employee. I was a woman with a plan and a secret weapon. My humiliation, my rage, they became the fuel for a new kind of work. I knew I couldn't just stay at Novatech and hope to win. Alexander had the company's legal and financial might behind him. I needed an equalizing force, a true partner in this war I was about to wage. I returned to my desk, my fingers flying across the keyboard, not to write new code for the company that betrayed me, but to rebuild what was already mine. I began in secret, working on a private encrypted server, recreating the kinetic synchronization array, KSA, from scratch, incorporating all the improvements and innovations I had designed over the last 5 years. I was in the middle of a particularly complex algorithm when my personal phone, the one I kept separate from my work devices, buzzed with an unfamiliar London number. I hesitated, but a gut feeling told me to answer. "Clara Evans?" a crisp, professional voice asked. "My name is Anya Sharma. I'm the CEO of a tech startup called Synapse Dynamics. I hope I'm not calling at a bad time." "It's an interesting time," I replied, my voice as guarded as I could make it. How can I help you, Ms. Sharma? Let's be direct, Clara. Our legal team was conducting a preliminary IP scan for some of our R&D projects, and we stumbled upon something fascinating. A provisional patent you filed back in 2023 for an adaptive load engine. It was an early prototype, but our system flagged it with an incredibly high match to the core logic of the KSA, the technology that Alexander Hayes just won an award for. A cold thrill shot through me, an electric jolt of validation. This was it. This was the opening I had been waiting for. She knew. She understood. And you called me because... I asked, my voice barely a whisper. Because your patent is the original, Clara, Anya said, her voice dropping to a conspiratorial whisper. Novatech's public-facing KSA is an expanded version of your design, but your original patent is still active, and Novatech never acquired the IP. They committed a massive oversight. We've been looking for an edge in the market, a truly disruptive technology, and our system led us straight to your door. I took a deep breath, trying to process the gravity of her words. She wasn't just a new ally. She was a lifeline, a mirror reflecting the truth of my situation. What are you proposing, Ms. Sharma? I'm proposing that we work together, she said, her voice firm and full of purpose. We're a new player in the market, an underdog. We don't have Novatech's reputation or resources, but we have integrity, and we have an engine that could disrupt the entire industry. I believe that with your genius and my company's infrastructure, we could build something that not only surpasses Novatech, but also helps you reclaim what is rightfully yours. We'll give you everything you need, a full development team, a state-of-the-art lab, and a legal team that can take on Alexander Hayes and win. Her words were a tidal wave, washing away months of isolation and despair. I had been fighting this battle alone, and suddenly, I had an army. Are you sure about this? I asked, a tremor in my voice. It's going to get very messy. A lawsuit against a company like Novatech will be brutal. You could lose everything. Anya let out a sharp, confident laugh. I thrive on messy, Clara. A patent infringement lawsuit against a giant like Novatech would make headlines, and we'd be seen as the David to their Goliath. Our investors would love the press. So, what do you say? Are you ready to get to work? To stop being the victim and start being the founder you were meant to be? I looked at the half-finished code on my screen, then at the Novatech logo on the wall of my office, a constant reminder of my betrayal. The path to victory was now clear, and for the first time in a long time, it didn't feel like a lonely road. I'm ready, I said, a smile of pure, unadulterated vindication spreading across my face. Let's build a better engine, and let's make him pay. For the next 2 months, I lived a double life. By day, I was the quiet, resentful senior engineer at Novatech, a ghost in the hallways of the company that had betrayed me. By night, I was a co-founder and lead developer for Synapse Dynamics, meticulously rebuilding the KSA from the ground up on my own server. Anya and I were in constant communication, meticulously planning our next move, gathering a mountain of evidence. The thrill of it was exhilarating, a secret rebellion that gave me purpose. But the constant fear of discovery was a heavy chain around my neck. That chain finally snapped on a Tuesday morning. My phone buzzed with a message from Alexander's assistant. Mr. Hayes needs to see you in his office? Now. My blood ran cold. He knew. I walked into his office, a knot of dread tightening in my stomach. He was standing with his back to me, looking out the window at the London skyline, his posture radiating a cold, calculated fury. He didn't turn around. You've been distracted, Clara, he said, his voice as sharp as broken glass. You've been careless. He finally turned, a tablet in his hand. The screen showed a screenshot of an email, a message I had sent to Anya, full of coded language, but clearly discussing the progress of my secret project. I had been foolish. I'd used a personal email account, but a Novatech server had flagged a keyword I had stupidly used. "I've known for a week, Clara," he said, his eyes glittering with a predatory malice. "You've been siphoning company resources, using company time to build a competing product. It's a clear violation of your contract. We've been monitoring your activity, your emails, your search history. You are a thief." My heart hammered against my ribs, but I forced myself to stand my ground. "I haven't stolen anything, Alexander. The foundational technology is mine. I have the patent to prove it. The only thief in this room is you." He let out a short, harsh laugh. "You're a fool. You think some forgotten patent application from years ago can protect you? We will bury you in litigation. We will sue you for breach of contract, intellectual property theft, and corporate espionage. Your career will be over before it ever begins. But I'll give you one last chance to save yourself. Walk away. Resign quietly. And maybe I'll forget this ever happened. Your silence is a small price to pay to keep your reputation intact." His words were a last, desperate attempt at control. He was trying to terrorize me into submission. But I was no longer the naive engineer he had humiliated on stage. My fear was replaced by an ironclad defiance. "I'm not walking away," I said, my voice shaking with a cold, righteous anger. "The KSA is my invention. You stole it from me, and you know it. And now I'm going to make sure the world knows it too." He stepped closer, his face twisted in a snarl of pure venom. "Get out of my office. You're fired. Security will escort you out. And when they do, you'll find that I've already prepared a press release. The world will know you as a malicious, backstabbing thief who tried to steal from the very company that gave you a career. You'll never work in this town again, Clara. I'll make sure of it." I was escorted out of the building just 2 hours later. The stares of my former colleagues, a barrage of judgment. The moment I stepped onto the street, my phone blew up with alerts. My inbox was flooded with news headlines. Novatech fires senior engineer Clara Evans for malicious replication of company technology. The articles were full of quotes from Alexander, painting me as a bitter, greedy villain. My colleagues, my friends, my reputation, all were being systematically destroyed. The world was seeing me as the traitor, not him. But as I read the articles, a strange sense of calm washed over me. Alexander had just made his biggest mistake. He had brought this fight out into the open. He thought he had won. He had no idea I was just about to reveal my secret weapon. I opened my phone and sent a single message to Anya. "He's made his move. It's our turn now. Unleash everything." The headlines screamed my shame, but in a small office across town, Anya Sharma and I were smiling. The smear campaign had been a calculated blow, a textbook corporate maneuver to discredit a whistleblower before they could speak. But it had also been exactly what we needed. It gave us a platform, a public narrative to dismantle. The fight was no longer a personal feud behind closed doors. It was a public spectacle, and we were about to turn the script on its head. Anya held up a thick file on her desk, her eyes gleaming with a focused, predatory satisfaction. "He played right into our hands, Clara. This is our formal letter. It's a work of art." "What's in it?" I asked, my voice low with anticipation. "Everything," she said, tapping the file. "We're detailing patent infringement, unauthorized use of your proprietary technology, and a clear history of corporate fraud. We're not just relying on your provisional patent, Clara. We've compiled a mountain of evidence that makes your case airtight." She slid a few documents across the table, her movements precise and deliberate. One was a screenshot of a Slack message. "Remember this?" she said. "From 4 years ago, a week after you got hired, Alexander was talking to an executive in a private channel. He wrote, The IP on the new engine is a mess, but we'll deal with it later. For now, we own the engineer, so we own the tech. He's admitting, in his own words, that he knew the IP was still in a legal gray area. He knew the rights were still yours, and he planned to take them from you later. Another document was a transcript of a Zoom call. And this, she continued, is a recording from that same year from a team meeting. Alexander is talking about your adaptive load engine. He says, "It's a fantastic idea, but let's rebrand it. We'll call it the KSA. It'll be a great way to make it look like our own invention and give us a fresh start with our marketing." We have his voice, his own words, admitting to the rebrand and the intention to obscure the original ownership. This isn't just about a patent anymore, Clara. This is about deliberate, corporate-level misconduct. My hands trembled as I looked at the documents. It was more than I had ever hoped for. It was indisputable proof. He was not just a thief. He was a cynical, calculating criminal who had been planning to screw me over from day one. My humiliation was replaced by a wave of cold, powerful resolve. He had underestimated me. He had no idea what he had awoken. "He tried to destroy my reputation," I said, the words coming out in a low hiss. "Let's destroy his, and his entire company for that matter." Anya smiled, a truly genuine, triumphant smile. "Precisely. Our legal team is filing the lawsuit first thing this morning. The letter has already been sent to Novatech's board, along with all of this evidence. By lunchtime, every major news outlet that ran with his pathetic smear campaign will be getting a copy of our filing, complete with every single one of these damning screenshots and transcripts. They'll have a new story to report, and I promise you, it's going to be the biggest story of the year." I stood up and walked to the window, looking out at the city that had, for so long, made me feel so small. The city that was about to see the greatest corporate takedown it had ever known. The fight had been brutal, but I had survived. And now, armed with truth and an undeniable weapon, I was ready to bring my entire world crashing down on the man who had stolen it from me. The clock was ticking. It was time for the world to see the truth. The first morning after the lawsuit became public was an intoxicating blur. I sat in a sleek conference room at Synapse Dynamics, the London skyline outside a panorama of my victory. News alerts and social media feeds were a cascade of chaos. "Novatech's star CTO accused of IP theft," one headline blared. Another screamed, "Documents reveal Novatech KSA was stolen technology." My name, Clara Evans, once a whisper of an accusation, was now the triumphant lead. Anya walked in, her face alight with exhilaration, holding a tablet that was buzzing with notifications. "It's working, Clara," she said, her voice filled with a giddy energy. "Novatech's stock is in free fall. They're down almost 20% in the last hour. The board is in an emergency meeting, and their phones are ringing off the hook. Investors are already starting to pull out, and at least 2 of their major clients have requested a formal review of their contracts. That pathetic smear campaign he launched? It's completely backfiring. He's being seen as a desperate, pathetic liar." The hatred I had carried for so long began to melt, replaced by something else, a cold, satisfying sense of justice. "What about Alexander?" I asked, my voice low. "Has he said anything?" Anya showed me a video on her tablet. It was a clip of Alexander, looking utterly unhinged, surrounded by reporters as he rushed out of the Novatech building. His carefully constructed composure was shattered, his hair disheveled, his eyes darting around in a panic. A reporter shoved a microphone in his face. "Mr. Hayes, any comment on the IP theft allegations and the resignation calls from your board?" Alexander stammered, his face a mask of furious panic. "This is a malicious fabrication. A desperate ex-employee is trying to damage my reputation," he insisted, before being shoved into a waiting car by a security guard. His pathetic display was more satisfying than any award. It was the public execution of his false persona. Later that afternoon, I got a call from an old number, Liam, the junior developer who had been so in awe of Alexander. His voice was quiet, full of shame. "Clara? It's Liam. I just wanted to say I'm so sorry. I didn't know." We all thought he was a genius. He even told me to leave the KSA's core logic alone because it was too complex. It was a lie. You were right. You were always right. The word felt foreign, yet it was exactly what I needed to hear. "You had no way of knowing, Liam," I said, a genuine warmth in my voice for the first time in months. He was very good at what he did. He was a master manipulator. "But not good enough, right?" he replied, a hopeful laugh in his voice. "We all found out this morning that the board is forcing him to resign. It's official. It's over." I hung up the phone and looked at Anya. My heart was pounding, a symphony of triumph. He was gone. The parasite had been removed. The man who had tried to destroy me was now destroyed himself, his career and reputation in tatters. He thought he could steal my life's work and silence me. He had no idea he had just handed me the microphone and a platform to expose him. The fight was over, but the story was just beginning. It was time for me to take the stage and tell it on my own terms. It was time for my rebirth. 2 months after Alexander's fall from grace, the world felt different. The stage lights weren't cold and hostile. They were warm, a welcoming glow that felt like home. The scandal had made me a public figure overnight, and my story had become a rallying cry for countless engineers and innovators. I was no longer just Clara Evans, the fired engineer. I was a symbol of reclamation, of fighting back, of integrity. I stood backstage at the European Tech Innovator Summit, the biggest conference of the year. Alexander had been scheduled to speak here, but his name had been unceremoniously scrubbed from the itinerary. I was his replacement. Anya, standing beside me, gave me a reassuring squeeze on the shoulder. "You ready, Clara?" she asked, a proud smile on her face. "You're not just speaking about technology today. You're speaking about justice. The world is listening." "I'm ready," I said, a nervousness fluttering in my stomach that had nothing to do with fear. This was my moment. The announcer's voice boomed over the speakers, introducing me to a standing room-only crowd. I walked onto the stage, a simple, unadorned flash drive in my hand, and stood at the podium. I took a deep breath and looked out at the sea of faces, engineers, executives, and journalists, all of them here for my story. "Good morning," I began, my voice clear and steady. 2 months ago, a man stood on a different stage and accepted an award for a technology called the Kinetic Synchronization Array. He called himself a visionary. He called himself a leader. He said that a project of this magnitude was his to claim. But he was wrong. He was a thief, and the technology he was awarded for was not his. A hush fell over the audience. I held up the flash drive. "This is not the KSA. This is the adaptive load engine, a better, faster, and more efficient version of the technology. This is the technology I developed and patented as an individual inventor years ago. And with the help of a brave partner, this is the technology that will soon be redefining what's possible. This," I said, placing the drive on the podium, "is my founder's proof." I then proceeded to give a technical presentation on the new engine, a powerful and undeniable display of my expertise. But in the middle of it, I paused. This story is not just about technology. It's about a man who tried to take everything from me. My work, my reputation, my career. He tried to bury me. But a funny thing happens when someone tries to bury you. You realize that you were a seed all along? You just needed to grow. The crowd erupted in applause. It wasn't just for the technology. It was for the triumph. I ended my speech with a simple call to action. To every innovator, to every young engineer, to everyone who has ever felt overlooked or unheard, remember your worth. Keep building, and never, ever let anyone take your story from you. I received a thunderous standing ovation. The applause felt like a warm embrace, a culmination of everything I had fought for. It wasn't revenge. It was reclamation. I had finally taken back what was mine. As I walked off the stage, I saw Anya waiting for me, a look of pure pride on her face. My journey was far from over, but for the first time in a very long time, I was truly free. My path forward was no longer about fighting a past injustice, but about building a better future. 2 weeks after my triumphant speech, my life felt completely different. I was no longer a ghost in the corporate machine, but a co-founder with a real office and a team that believed in me. So when Anya insisted we attend the annual Innovation Gala, I didn't hesitate. This wasn't about seeking attention. It was about celebrating the new reality we had built. The ballroom of the Grosvenor House Hotel was a sparkling sea of black tie elegance, and for the first time, I felt like I truly belonged. I was laughing with Anya, a glass of champagne in my hand, as we discussed the design for our new testing facility. The investors are thrilled, Clara, she was saying. They love the story. It's not just about the tech. It's about the founder. It's about you. Just as she spoke the last word, the laughter died in my throat. I felt a sudden icy presence behind me, a familiar shadow that I had hoped was gone forever. I turned slowly, my heart pounding a frantic rhythm against my ribs. There he was, Alexander Hayes. He looked broken. The swagger, the self-assured arrogance that had defined him, was gone. He stood alone by the velvet ropes, a small, pathetic figure in a poorly fitting tuxedo, his eyes darting around as if expecting judgment from every corner of the room. When his gaze landed on me, his face contorted into a weak, pathetic smile. Clara, he said, his voice a low, greasy whisper, utterly devoid of the booming confidence I remembered. I was hoping to run into you. We need to talk. Anya stepped in front of me, a protective wall. I think we said all there was to say in the courthouse, Alexander. He ignored her, his gaze locked on mine, a desperate, almost manic gleam in his eyes. I know I made some mistakes. I was under so much pressure at Novatech. You have to understand, the board, the investors, they were breathing down my neck. I regret how I handled things, truly. You don't regret things, Alexander, I said, my voice cold and steady. You lied, you stole, you tried to destroy a person's life. He flinched, but quickly tried to recover. I want to apologize, Clara. It's not too late. I have some powerful contacts. We could get you back in at Novatech, fix this whole mess. I'll even recommend you for a seat on the board. Let's not let this get ugly. His words were poison, a final, desperate attempt at manipulation. He wasn't apologizing. He was trying to buy his way back into a life he had lost. My heart, once full of a white-hot hatred, was now just a cold, hard stone. You already made it ugly, Alexander, I said, a finality in my tone. The moment you took my trophy, you made it ugly. The moment you fired me and called me a thief, you made it ugly. There's nothing to fix, because you are broken, not the situation. Just then, a young engineer, a kid who looked about Leo's age, had been standing nearby and must have overheard our exchange. He stepped forward, his eyes wide with a mix of awe and contempt. He was holding a glass of juice, but his hand was steady. "Excuse me, sir," he said, looking directly at Alexander. "Are you Alexander Hayes? The man who stole Clara Evans' algorithm and tried to pass it off as his own?" Alexander's face went from pale to ghostly white. He visibly shrunk. I don't know what you're talking about," he stammered, glancing nervously at the crowd, which was now starting to turn and murmur. "This is a private conversation?" "It's not private," the young engineer said, his voice gaining confidence. "I'm a computer science student. We studied your case in a class on corporate ethics. You didn't invent anything. You just stole. And now Ms. Evans is a founder, and you're a footnote. Your 15 minutes of fame are over, Mr. Hayes. Just get lost." The silence that followed was deafening. Alexander stood there, a pathetic figure in a tuxedo, his eyes glazed over with defeat. His attempt to salvage his dignity had been utterly shattered by a total stranger. With one final, defeated glance at me, he turned on his heel and disappeared into the crowd, a disgraced shadow. I watched him go, not with hatred, but with a quiet, hollow finality. It wasn't me who had destroyed him. It was his own hubris and the new generation he had tried to deceive. And as the young engineer gave me a thumbs up, I felt a sense of closure I never thought I'd find. The fight was over. The war was won. Months turned into a year, and then 2. The Innovation Gala felt like a lifetime ago. Synapse Dynamics had officially launched the new adaptive load engine to great acclaim, and I was no longer just the lead engineer. I was a co-founder, a leader, a visionary. The story of my victory was a constant backdrop to our success, a reminder that we were building something based on integrity, not theft. Our team was not just building code, we were building a culture. I was in my new office, a vast space with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the Thames, when Anya walked in. "The board meeting went well," she said, setting a coffee cup on my desk. "The numbers for this quarter are off the charts. We've just secured our biggest contract yet, and we're well on our way to becoming a market leader." I leaned back in my chair, a genuine smile on my face. "It's all thanks to the team," I said. "Everyone here believes in what we're doing. They're not just here for a paycheck. They're here to be part of something bigger." "They believe in you, Clara," she corrected gently, her eyes full of pride. "They believe in your story. What you did wasn't just about reclaiming your technology. It was about reclaiming your identity. That's a powerful thing to inspire people with." Her words made me think back to the beginning, to Alexander's empty promises, the stolen trophy, the humiliation. For so long, my life had been defined by what he had done to me, but it wasn't anymore. My story had become something bigger than revenge. It had become a lesson for me and a beacon for others. I had been asked to give a keynote speech at the same university I had attended years ago to the graduating class of engineers. Standing on that small stage, looking out at a new generation of bright, hopeful faces, I felt a sense of peace I hadn't known was possible. I didn't talk about Alexander. I talked about my journey. "My story began with a moment of betrayal," I said, my voice calm and clear. "A time when I felt like a seed buried in the ground, completely forgotten. But what I learned is that true victory isn't about getting even. It's about remembering your worth. It's about taking that betrayal, that humiliation, and using it as fertilizer for your own growth. It's about turning that moment of defeat into the fuel for your next great invention." After the speech, as students crowded around me, a young woman with a notebook in her hand, her eyes shining, spoke up. "Ms. Evans, your story gives me so much hope. I'm afraid of the corporate world, of being overlooked." What's the one thing you would tell me to do to protect myself? I smiled. Never let anyone take your story from you. That's what your work is, a story. It's a reflection of who you are. Document it, protect it, and stand by it. The greatest reward isn't a trophy or a title. It's the moment you realize that you've reclaimed your own story, your own path, and your own identity. I walked off the stage to a thunderous standing ovation, my heart full. Alexander Hayes was a ghost, a footnote in a story that was no longer about him. My true victory wasn't his downfall. It was my rebirth. I had taken back what was mine, not just the technology, but my voice, my dignity, and my future. And as I walked into the next chapter of my life, I knew that the best was yet to come. Clara's story teaches us a huge lesson. Don't ever be naive or assume everyone will be kind to you. Carefully protect your brainchild from the very beginning. Save everything, from old emails to forgotten files. When you're treated unfairly, don't stay silent. Find the courage to speak up. But most importantly, don't let anger consume you. Use those painful experiences as motivation to build something truly amazing for yourself. Because true victory isn't about watching the bad guy fall. It's about you standing up and creating a better future for yourself. Thank you all for listening to this emotional story. I hope Clara's journey has given you some valuable lessons and a lot of inspiration. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to like, share, and comment with your thoughts. And be sure to subscribe to the channel so you don't miss my next captivating stories. Goodbye for now, and I'll see you next time.